By my hand have the gods seen fit to rule these lands.
Hello everybody, my name is Mithrils. I have been interested in ace mechanics for quite some time, and today I'm going to be sharing my findings on Nero. To do that, start with his skills. So first of all, his trait gains Frost Guard before receiving attacks for the first time each round. So basically this is a defense up 2 buff with the added side effect of debuffing the enemy for 1 turn. For all intents and purposes, this is just a defense up 2. It doesn't stack with a similar buff like defense up 2. Now this is also applied before the enemy hits you. So the game kind of registers, okay, you're about to take a hit, you are being buffed up with Frost Guard 2 before you receive the hit, and the whole defense calculation is being done with Frost Guard 2 already up. And then you retaliate with speed down, lasts for 1 turn, and this cannot be resisted. It can still be blocked with, say, an immunity and stuff like that. On top of that, when you ascend him, you get the good old speed aura that we all know and love. Next up, we got the basic, very straightforward here, 110% damage, immune for 2 turns, nothing special. You do scale with defense, which is a kind of a big point, right? So as for his special, Cold Sword deals 90% damage to all enemies, increase the duration of all negative effects on the primary target by 1 turn, and scales with defense. So nothing too special about this ability either. The multiplier is a bit low, but since he scales so well, this is not an issue. I would say the best use of an ability like this is probably to extend the duration of, say, a stun, or maybe even a silence, or, you know, one of the CC debuffs. Next up, we're looking at Stalagmite Tidal Cut. Deals 110% damage to all enemies and summons Frosty Cut that lasts until the end of the next round. Damage scales with this hero's defense. So this is a bit of an interesting one. We got the whole Frosty Cut debuff. Now this is an aura. So this is an aura placed on Nero. This is to illustrate that if you kill Nero, the aura will go away. And that is the only way to remove the Frosty Cut aura, or should I say the reduced healing effect on the enemies. So the enemies cannot take a turn to reduce the counter on the debuff they have. It's a debuff without a timer. It lasts for 2 rounds from the moment that Nero casts the ability. So that means that you kind of want Nero to be quite fast so that you can have the maximum uptime on this aura. You can see the aura in 2 ways. One is a yellow kind of icon above the head of Nero. The other is the reduced healing effect debuff that you get on the enemies. So you want Nero to be fast so you can get 2 out of 3 turn uptime on this. However, this is not really his main selling point. None of these abilities really are. So the thing that makes Nero Nero is his big damage, right? He scales with defense. So how do Nero scale? After all, he scales with defense, right? So you take his defense and you double it, so that's about 8,000. You add it to his attack, and that's about 13,000. So my Nero has about 13,000 attack when he's calculating his damage. This is a bit strange when you start to think about how does that interact with buffs, right? Where does the attack buff come into play? Where does the defense buff come into play? I'll show you. So first up, his basic attack. Here he's attacking with no buffs, so that means he's got currently 13,466 attack. This time he's got his own defense buff. This time he's got 17,605 attack. That means that his defense, which is 4,139, is multiplied by 1.5. So effectively he's now got 6,208 defense. That is multiplied by 2 for 12,417. Then his attack is added for a total of 17,605 attack. So that's a 30% damage increase, and that checks out. So now it's starting to get juicy. Now I have brought in Yolanda and I'm giving him his attack buff. And at this point, he's doing a lot more damage, as you can see. We're up to 20,000 damage. He's currently operating with 20,199 attack. And the reason that he's doing more damage with an attack buff is that after his defense is added to his attack, that whole big number, 13,466, is then multiplied by his attack buff, which is 1.5. And that's how you get to 20,199 attack. So that's a 1.5 damage multiplier. And that damage multiplier is multiplying both his bonus from defense and his bonus from attack. Now, the last clip I'm going to show you, now he's got both an attack buff and a defense buff. And this is where it gets really crazy. He's currently operating with 26,407 damage. And the reason why at this point the damage is scaling more than the buffs kind of say it should scale is because his defense buff is now multiplied with his attack buff. If you remember, his defense is first calculated with his defense buff, then it's added to the attack. And then that number, that big number, 17,605, is multiplied with 1.5. And that number already has the defense buff calculated inside it. So yeah, his defense buff is kind of added 1.5 times. So yeah, he's at 26,407 attack at this point. Now that we know how his mechanics works, let's talk about how to gear Nero. First of all, I'll show you my stats here. You've seen these already, but as you can see, I got 5,188 attack, 4,137 defense, 228 speed, I got 428 crit damage with 116 precision. Also got a little bit of resistance, and yeah, that doesn't matter. If you want resistance to matter, you're gonna need more than that. So as you can see here, I'm going for defense with crit damage and attack, and crit rate where I can get it. So this is not a perfect piece though. Ideally this would have speed instead of crit rate, and I would find the crit rate on other pieces that can't roll speed. But that's what I got. This is more or less the ideal piece: attack, crit damage, defense, crit rate on helmet. And same with this one. I fortunately managed to find some precision on this. 16 precision is, I think, to have quote-unquote enough, you want to push precision up to 30, but at 16, it's doing the job, right? You don't have the budget to fit in more precision into the build, really. As you can see, I managed to find the attack as a fabled modifier, so got really lucky with this one. Boots, ideally I would have a percentage defense on boots, but yeah, speed boots is what you want, and you know, the usual stats: crit damage, attack and defense, and crit rate where you can find it. As for the ring, I managed to find a really good ring, but unfortunately it rolled resistance. Now if this had crit rate instead, I could have you know, speed and crit rate on the ring, and I could swap out this crit rate for speed if I had the piece for it. And that's how I would make the stats kind of go up. And as for the neck, I'm going for a defense percent neck with, yeah, I currently have a health percent roll here, which is good, but it's not ideal. Speed would be better for sure. As for the implicit modifier, I'm going for crit damage where I can get it. The places where I can't get crit damage, I go for defense instead, as you can see here on the neck. And that speaks true for the relics as well. You can see crit damage, and here I go for defense percent. So in order, the most important stats would be crit damage first, then defense percent, and then attack, assuming 100% crit rate. And of course, speed is always a priority. So that means I'm currently at 228 speed. If I manage to get speed modifiers on my necklace and my weapon, I would be up around 250 speed, and that would be a lot better. Yeah, but I'd still need to find those pieces. As you probably noticed, I'm running Avarice with Raider, and I do believe this to be the best set for Nero. There is a very strong argument to go Immunity set instead of Raider set on Nero, and I think that's a little better, but I made this build before the Immunity set was introduced into the game. As for the substats on the relics, pretty much the ideal stat for Nero, in my opinion. Let's see if I have it. I don't know if I have it. Damage scales, damage dealt. I think there's a crit damage scales with current health. The thing with Nero is that you want to maximize his damage on full health targets. That means crit damage on ultimate and crit damage on basic. I think those are the best ones when it comes to crit damage. But you know, it's a wash really. As long as you get crit damage on the ultimate, I think that is the best thing. And whether the basic or the special is the best one after that is a bit up in the air. But I think if you can get the crit damage ones with damage scales with maximum health, or crit damage scales with maximum health, then that's basically what you want to go for. Another good stat is in PvP mode defense. This will be pretty good, and if you can get in PvP mode attack, that is even better, because his best place is PvP, right? You use him in arena, you use him in RTA. Now I don't do RTA, so I don't know what the meta in the RTA is currently, but I very much use him in arena. Speaking of PvP, I'm going to show you a couple of arena matches I recorded. These are all on auto. He would of course get better results on manual, but I want to do this on auto, at least for now, while I climb up from platinum to diamond after reset. So these are all in the upper end of 3000. We're all trying to climb up to platinum at this point. Keep in mind that these are all wins. I see no real point in showing losses. This is for entertainment purposes after all, so let's just show the wins and have fun. Right, so here we are at the tail end of the video. Gonna give you my closing thoughts. Overall, I think Nero is an exceptionally good RGB hero. He doesn't quite stack up to the LDs, but he can still compete, I think. As for his best friends, his best supports, there are a couple of interesting mentions and synergies that you can consider when putting Nero in your team. So one interesting synergy is Ashlyn. And the reason why Ashlyn is an interesting synergy is because she also does this when an enemy restores health for others. Ashlyn reduces their healing by 50%. This stacks additively with Nero. So Nero and Ashlyn together, when using the Frosty Cut from Nero, will reduce healing to 0%. Except for the one doing the healing, who will avoid this specific thing and only be affected by Frosty Cut. I think his best support, I mean, you would look at Bran and you would think to yourself, oh my god, Bran is such a good support. He's got this defense aura that's really good. He's got both an attack and a defense up. And for PvE, say if you're climbing tower and you just want to do it on auto, I think Bran could be a consideration. However, this is on a 4-turn cooldown, making it kind of counterproductive for tower. And for PvP, I don't think anyone is... I don't know. I don't think Bran is really suited that well for PvP. He used to be, but these days, I don't know. I don't think Bran is a serious consideration. I think his best support nowadays, well, I shouldn't say nowadays, because speed lead is not what it used to be. But I think if you got like an A5 Aubrey, yeah, I know, but at least an A2 Aubrey, so you can remove negative effects as it's his turn, right? You can do this thing here, applies attack up 2 and crit damage up for 2 turns. As we have established, attack up 2 is fantastic for Nero. It's his best buff, and you get this crit damage as well, which is kind of not that great. It's about a 7, for me it's a 7% damage increase. But this is quite nice, and he gets the extra turn immediately. He can apply the Frosty Cut immediately before anyone goes. So yeah, I think Aubrey is exceptional for him. Also Aubrey's passive, which heals when you get low, right? This also goes really well with tanky teams and Nero specifically. This also is a good consideration. You can do this before you do the big nuke from Nero, and he will be able to take out the Nick brothers. So yeah, I think Aubrey is overall great character. Not what he used to be. Well, he never used to be good now that I think about it. But if he was buffed like a couple of patches earlier, then he would have been really, really good. But as it stands, I still think he's good for Nero. I tend to run him with Vengeful Hassle so that Nero can die and I can just resurrect him and still get the nuke off. I think that's a pretty good combo. I also run him with Corrupt Aurak. They don't specifically have any good synergies, but they are just, in my opinion, good teammates in the current bruiser meta. Two decent bruisers, and one has good damage and the other one has CC. So good teammates in my opinion. Of course, I cannot skip Atara. Now, Atara's passive defense will stack with Nero and how he scales, but do keep in mind that if you give Nero a defense buff, then his own defense will be calculated first. So if he's got 4,000 defense, it will be calculated to 6,000 defense with a defense buff. Then you add Atara's defense, which is going to be around 1,000, let's say. So now you got 7k defense. This is then doubled for 14k and added to his attack. So Atara scales really well with attack buffs, not so well with defense buffs on Nero. So keep that in mind. You want to give Nero attack buffs over defense buffs. Ideally you have both. Ideally you have both and you have Atara. But Atara is not a huge damage increase, but it's still pretty good, especially with an attack buff. So keep that in mind. Other than that, her passive where she removes negative effects helps Nero a lot, making him able to actually do his stuff. And yeah, the nuke as well is pretty good and helps everyone survive. So that is the supports and teammates that I would kind of recommend for Nero. Hopefully you like this video format where we dive a bit deeper than normal into the hero mechanics and how they work. If this is something you like, remember to leave a like, comment on the video, hit me up with a subscribe, and I hoot you have a nice day. Bye bye.